businesses today have got tens of thousands of Excel spreadsheets. Excel spreadsheets are editable and there's version numbers and they're distributed and they change the version numbers and it ends up that nobody really knows, what is actually what because it has been edited so many times. One thing that MTech brought to us was that one version of the truth and having your physical KPIs alongside your financial KPIs together in one integrated application really drives that one version of the truth, which for all businesses, it's a double-edged sword. Some weeks you might get bad news, some weeks you might get good news, but it is the truth. It is what it is because those are the transactions that have been completed inside the MTech application that are locked behind our the period end, wall there basically, so they cannot be edited or changed.
Welcome everyone, this is MTech's Accelerate. My name is Nikolai Shidihin and I have Jim Johnston with me as usual, and today we have a wonderful guest, Danny Rotherham. How are you doing, guys?
Doing good, Nick.
Very well, thank you.
Doing really good. Yeah, welcome, Danny. Danny's
Thank you.
Danny's just recently joined us. In fact, not recently. I guess now, Danny, it's 9 months. You're in month 9 of your MTech journey, and veteran already. Yeah.
Not yet.
But great. It's great to have you as part of the Accelerate podcast today, because you got a wealth of experience, Danny, I guess, in working with integrators, both here in the UK, and experience of providing technical services through one of the breed companies into Eastern Europe and Russia and things in the past. So, I think great experience, guy. And what we'd love to talk a bit about today is particularly your experience of utilizing the MTech system in one of the UK's largest integrators, which was your job up until the end of last year. So that's really what we'd love to talk about today. And how do you leverage that whole system, that whole data management, just beyond a database? How can we get more value for an integrated business using MTech? So welcome to the show, Danny.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for that great introduction, Jim. But yeah, MTech. So in my previous employment, I found that I was part of the decision-making team and the investigative team to look for a solution for, like you said, one of the largest integrators in the UK. What we found very quickly was that MTech is a disruptor and an enabler solution. So it disrupts the business's way of doing things. It allows and enables the business to make significant changes through their business processes to make things more efficient. And in my head, the one thing that always comes back to me is that we do it this way because we always have done. In my head, I think that is the most expensive statement that any business can ever make. And I know that MTech made a significant impact on my previous employer in making those business changes to make it more efficient and ultimately, ideally, more profitable.
So you're talking more about the importance of adoption, right? So if you keep on doing the way you've been doing in the past, it doesn't make much sense. So it's important to really adopt the system and adopt to the new way. But maybe let's uncover that a little bit. What does it actually mean to adopt, and what this brings to the company?
Yeah, well, I think in my experience, we found that you've got to know all of the processes that everybody does and what jobs everybody does. So you need to map out your current processes. How do things get done from a business point of view? Every day in, day out. When you actually map that out, and like I say, we actually covered the walls of an office in paper, and we drew out the entire process, start to finish, which was a lengthy process in itself, but so worthwhile, because then whenever you're looking at it in black and white, you can see, well, what if we did this? Or MTech allowed us and enables us to do this a different way. That's whenever you can really highlight those changes. But then, like you say, it's about then that change management, managing change management so that people understand why you're making those changes and what the benefits of those changes are going to be. And it's not about being ruthlessly efficient and removing people from the business. It's about redeploying people into a different role to maximize those efficiencies. Yeah.
Got you. And I mean, what you're describing there is a bit of a, it's something that I think is really important. People view it as a database and a reporting tool. It's actually a tool that can transform your business in terms of the way you deal with business processes you've described, the way you deal with data, discipline, how you leverage that. I mean, how would you, what are what are 2 or 3 of the key areas where you were able to leverage that data system and the management of data throughout the business?
I think, again, I'm going to give credit where credit's due, and that was the agricultural director of my previous employer, had one vision, and that was one version of the truth. That was critical for every business. Businesses today have got tens of thousands of Excel spreadsheets. Excel spreadsheets are editable, and there's version numbers, and they're distributed, and they change the version numbers, and it ends up that nobody really knows, what is actually what, because it has been edited so many times. One thing that MTech brought to us was that one version of the truth, and having your physical KPIs alongside your financial KPIs together in one integrated application really drives that one version of the truth, which for all businesses, it's a double-edged sword. Some weeks you might get bad news, some weeks you might get good news, but it is the truth. It is what it is, because those are the transactions that have been completed inside the MTech application that are locked behind our the period end wall there, basically, so they cannot be edited or changed. So you can't edit or change those things. It is one version of the truth, and it does drive accountability. Because the business managers and business leaders know that these transactions are locked, they are, seem to be more accountable and have to step up, because, that is what it is. They have validated the data. They have completed the processes. This is where we are.
Yeah, and I think anybody who worked in live operations knows how important it is to know the right number, and
Absolutely.
important to have a base to argue that that's the right number. Like you said, if there was an Excel and different versions of, table, and then something got changed. So yeah, it's hard to say if it's, this is the right number or not, and everybody will say, well, my number is better, that's
Correct.
So let's consider that to be a
Yes.
truth. So yeah, the reliability of data, and you also mentioned that people are getting more accountable for what they're doing, and I think also the implementation of the system brings that to the company, because if we look again historically, that with the systems, only like accountants or management, those people are working with computers and deep into some systems. But then if you implement a system that covers the whole business, you also get more users into the same platform.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And that it drives down that accountability from the farm level all the way through to your financial director, to the reporting, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the enabler piece, I think, inside MTech systems, that what MTech brings to a business is that ability to make those significant changes, if necessary, to push those efficiencies. And that's key for any business, is being as accountable, and efficiency. They are the main drivers for any business today, so that everybody is aware of where we are as a business, what direction do we need to go, and that's the bit that is the enabler part. It drives the KPIs, both from a physical and a financial point of view, to allow business decisions to be made to make sure that the business is going in the right direction.
Yeah, Danny, I mean, that's interesting too. And you talk about the use of finance and actually leveraging production and finance together. I think that's one of the transformational things that is delivered by the system. But also, talk to me a little bit about the kind of audit trail and traceability of data and transactions through the business. How is that possible within the system? And if so, how do you leverage that benefit?
Absolutely, 100%. It does make auditing so much simpler. Whether it be just an audit trail from your farm data, whether it's an audit trail on what happened on farm temperature profiles, water intake, from all of your sort of like welfare metrics from a farm level, you can audit that sort of thing. But the business process auditing, I think, is something that is undervalued currently with the system. I think that the MTech application has this in spades. It really does drive like I say, the accountability, but the accountability then leads to an ease of auditing. So whether it is through your delegation of authority for purchase order approvals, sales order approvals, all of these things leave a footprint the entire way through the system. Who created the purchase order? Who was who requisitioned the purchase order? Who created the purchase order? Who approved the purchase order? Who received the purchase order? That auditability is worth, it's gold to an internal auditor, because then they get the confidence within the system in a very short period of time that, look, we have a full audit trail here for all of our business processes. From an internal auditing point of view, absolute gold dust. It means that they have the confidence, if an external auditor is being used, to present this data through to the external auditor, which makes, again, it's about efficiencies. Rather than in the old days sitting down for 1 or 2 days with an external auditor, you can complete these tasks now in a very short period of time, because they can get to know the system, gain the confidence that the system will do what they want it to, and you can provide the evidence to them that the system does what it is supposed to do. I think that's critical for a business. It's about efficiency.
Yeah, and talking about efficiency, I believe that also affects all users, and especially managers, since you have all the data that available right now, and it is reliable and it's traceable, so managers can probably take decisions faster, and maybe even like make more weighted decisions, rather than just like thinking about, okay, so based on my experience, let's do this.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is having that key element of having all of the information together in one place, one integrated system. That is where the business can make the weighty decisions, like you say, a weighted decision on what direction we're going. Do we place more birds? Do we cut back? That sort of thing. What are we going to do with our egg production? Have we got overproduction in our breeder operation? Are we going to sell? We've got visibility of this beforehand. We can make decisions that are going to make sure that we are utilizing all of our produce.
Really cool. Now, it's a great. I mean, these systems are great, but how do you get people not throughout a whole business going to be using this and going to be IT savvy? They're not going to be. How do you go about making sure that the business really locks in? People have the confidence to use a system like this. How does that all work? Was that an issue for you in the business you previously worked with?
Initially, from our farming base, it was because we had a lot of sort of, I'm not going to say IT illiterate, but I'm going to say, less IT savvy people maybe on our farming base. But, once they got the proper training, and there was a lot of hand holding, and, it is from a data entry point of view, relatively straightforward. And once they got everybody going with that, it was fine. The beauty about the MTech application for me was that it's a role-based system, and it's a permissions-based system. So the individuals then had their individual roles and the individual permissions that only allowed them to see and do what their job was. So it wasn't like you were presenting them with everything. They had their key tasks that they had to complete, and the system allowed us to apply permissions specifically down to a screen level, that what these people could and could not do. So that, getting that done properly from the start probably reduced the number of errors and keying in for keying mistakes and stuff. And it was then very specific training. So we created SOPs, standard operating procedures for all of the individual roles and tasks and stuff. But realistically, it was reasonably straightforward, because they only had access to what they needed to have access to. So therefore, then they weren't blown away by the entire system all at once and looking to see, where am I going here, there, wherever. And the other thing for me was the ability to add screens and reports and stuff into your favorites folder meant that everybody could very quickly, put their path, what tables they needed and stuff, what screens they needed. They went into their favorites and they could rename them and that sort of stuff. So it was really quite straightforward to do. I'm not going to say it didn't have its problems, but it was, considering the size of the operation, the scope of the operation, it was actually relatively straightforward.
And with all those convenience feature you managed, I think it's still hard to implement such a big project. Not even hard, but like challenging, right? Because we mentioned already at the beginning the change management, because all of those procedures for pretty much every user in the system, they changed, right? Instead of doing one thing, they now have to do another thing. So that's a lot of change management. And how did you deal with that?
Realistically, we had each area had a super user, but the super users were then reporting through to one of the senior operational managers. So the senior management basically got on board very quickly. They were actually really the early adopters of the MTech application because they could see the outcomes, they could see the benefits. So they really did buy in, and that really made the change management piece a lot simpler because the senior managers within the business, they were on board. They were engaged with the changes and with the processes because they wanted the outputs. So realistically, then they helped significantly with the whole change management of every single department throughout. Communication is key, as we know with any business. Communicating to everybody involved from the bottom all the way to the top. What is going to happen? Why is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And what are going to be the outputs of this? And I think that's something that my previous employer did really well, was the communication.
So you ended up pretty much, it sounds like, Danny, with that whole system, MTech system, really driving the business. It was really at the core of the whole integrated businesses kind of functions, how it does its day to day, how it looks at numbers. It in that way is much more than just a database.
Absolutely.
With all the transactional information.
It is a business tool today that really does drive everything that they do. You know, it's all about, yes, getting your farm data entered daily, right across the entire farming estate, information coming into the system, feeding the system the data for our planning modules, whether it be breeder planning, whether it be broiler planning, getting that information, using the tools that MTech enables, things like your surveys for audits and stuff, for doing your gate scores, letter scores, all of those things on the farm. Then it's the business processes. The business processes. All businesses have inputs. It's the purchasing of those goods and services that go onto the farms and the cost analysis of that. It's then the sales, making sure that any, you know, if they're selling hatching eggs, that the appropriate processes are being followed from approvals all the way through. Are we selling the right products? All of that information, and it's key to the business there that, you know, because obviously they were integrating then with their SAP ERP system. So it was then making sure that all of that information was flowing correctly in the right direction to allow us to integrate to SAP so that we could do our weekly close of our accounts and our monthly close of our accounts. That way then it was one version of the truth. It was the entire system driving towards making sure that we were as efficient and as profitable as possible. And it was a real embedded continuous improvement behind it all, because we were always then looking at our own internal processes, because, you know, we'd learned those lessons throughout the implementation about, you know, process improvement, but you don't just do it once. You have to continuously look at all of your individual processes and make those changes when you see those benefits.
And like, I guess I have one more question, and it is more like a generalized question, I guess. We talked about the effect of implementation of systems like that on a business. So inside the business, so you change the processes, you improve the process, you provide this continuity and traceability of the data, and that becomes like the base for our organization to make decisions, plan, and so on. But in the project management, when you implement the project, there are internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. So with the internal stakeholders, I understand that's a massive effect. But and again, maybe not on your previous employer, but in general, how does implementation of such system would affect, say, end customer or somebody outside of a company? Does that affect company's reputation or something like that?
Absolutely. So you mentioned there that we changed some of our business processes. So what we actually did was we created a small team of people who were responsible for all purchase order creation and the processing of all of our purchase orders. So the business users approved the purchase order. the purchase orders on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, then were interfacing down into our ERP system. So a small team of 4 people were looking after the entire purchasing and sales division for all of agriculture across the business. Now, only agriculture was on MTech, and the rest of the business was using our ERP system, SAP. So every month then we would look at the transactional history of the entire business, and we would put what we call a first time match rate against all of the purchase orders, which means then the higher the percentage, it means that there is less human intervention or there are less errors in the process of a purchase order being created, approved, and processed successfully to our suppliers. So it's a reputational thing. What we found was that the transactions completed inside MTech had a significantly higher first-time match rate than those that were completed inside SAP, because we had everything locked down. Things had to be 100% inside MTech before they got anywhere near SAP, which resulted in, like I say, a significantly higher first-time match rate, where agriculture was responsible for approximately 2/3 of each month, of the total transactions each month. So it was a significant milestone and a significant win for agriculture that they needed to have less human intervention into any of our processes, which, if you think about it and what you just said, reputationally for the business, it means that agriculture were better at ensuring our suppliers were paid on time, in terms, etc., than other parts of the business. So it really did bring that to the forefront of everybody's minds whenever this information was shared with the wider business. So they were then looking at, okay, how do we get to ourselves? How do we close this gap? So it led to a whole, again, continuous improvement on the other side of the business.
Well, Danny, that's been great. And I really enjoyed this last 20 minutes or so, just sharing some of the benefits of how you can use this system to leverage it beyond just data capture and reporting. It actually goes far beyond that. And I really like the aspects you speak about in terms of challenging you to look at your business processes and looking at how you can change and adapt them to best practice, how you can become more efficient in terms of how you manage these business processes, how you can use the system to transform a business, to become a transformational tool to drive the way the business performs, improve efficiencies, and really focus people throughout the business. And that strong message of one version of the truth, I think, is critical. Having run large integrators myself, I know the frustration when people have different numbers and different reports from different sources, and you spend your time focused on whose number is correct rather than let's just drive and drive things and move forward, and spend our time talking about how we improve the performance of the business. And I think the key element of that you mentioned around production KPIs and finance, cost of production functionality is key, isn't it, to driving the improvement? You need to know what it's costing you to produce the birds with this FCR and this growth rate, etc. It's critical to the success of any modern integrated poultry business. I love the audit trail. I love that because that's really strong and it's very powerful. And again, it drives accountability, doesn't it, throughout the whole business, from finance to the farmer who's inputting his daily data. I mean, it drives accountability right back to the source. That's really helpful. And it's been good talking to you about how you leverage it beyond the database. How do you leverage that data? How do you create the visibility and the focus and the energy for continuous improvement using the database across different stuff? Data discipline is critical to the success of a business nowadays, and it drives that, doesn't it? So it's been good talking about it. There's lots of things beyond it just providing your daily and weekly reports that you can leverage this system for. But thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that.
Not at all. Thank you both very much.
All right. Thanks, Danny, for joining. And for those who are watching, if you like this episode, please smash that like button. And if you want to know more about MTech products, visit our website and request a demo and win a chance to talk one-on-one with Jim or Danny. And of course, if you want to see more episodes from us, please follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on Twitter. See you later.
See you later. See you next time.
Thanks.